Erev Tov, everyone. Jewish tradition always looked at the non-Jews who appear in the Chumash and Tanakh not only as individuals, but as prototypes of people, of nations, of ideas, of societies. So for instance, Chazal, when they spoke of Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre, who were the friends of Avram Avinu, spoke of them as being good people, very good people, believers, befriended Avraham, appreciated Avraham. So even though they are not part of the stock of Avraham, so to speak, but there are people in the world like Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre that are good people. They don't have to be, there used to be an ad in the New York subway that you don't have to be Jewish to eat Levi's rye bread. You don't have to be Jewish, even the Gemara says, even to obtain the world to come. We are not an exclusive religion. So if that's the case with good people, so then we will see it's the case with other people as well. Because in this week's Parsha, we are introduced to two people, Balak and Bilam. Balak is a ruler. Balak ben Sipor melech l'moav v'Isai. What does that pasuk mean? It means that he's the emperor of the world. Moab was a powerful nation, strategically located. It guarded the eastern approaches there to Israel. And they have a connection to Avraham Avinu. That's why it's called Moab. That's what she called her child. They're descended from Lot. And as we know throughout the Parshas and Brachos, Avraham Avinu does everything in his power to help Lot, to save Lot, not willing to give up on Lot, even when Lot deserts him. So Balak, what's his problem here? So he phrases it as follows. It's a physical problem. And they're going to eat me up. They're going to destroy me. Why? Did they give you any indication that they're going to destroy you? But that's his fixation. So his fixation is that the presence of the Jewish people per se is a physical danger to him and to his country, to his society, and to his world. The Jewish people don't have to do anything. They just have to exist. That's enough to destroy. If you'll think about it, I mean, Yamach Shmo, that was Hitler. He said it's a bacillus. It's a virus. So there's no such thing as forgiving them. It's interesting. There is a recorded conversation that between the Vatican and Jewish representatives during the Second World War. Some say it is even that they discussed that it reached the Pope Pius XII, then others say it was only with cardinals. But in any event, the Jewish representative said that these are innocent people. They're babies. What do you want from them? How can you kill innocent people? And the church fathers said, there is no such thing as an innocent Jew. So that's Bullock. So Bullock is willing to do anything he can when you're trying to overcome an imagined enemy. It's far more difficult than overcoming a real enemy, because the imagined enemy always exists. He's always there. So he's willing to resort to any means in order to achieve his end. Bilam will say, when Bullock will ask him, what's your price? What's your fee? He will say, Yitin li Bullock malo beiso kesef is off. $10 million. There's no limit to what I'll pay for you. Bilam, on the other hand, is an intellectual. We all know the famous Chazal, Lo kom b'Yisrael k'mo she'od, that amongst the Jewish people, we never had a person of prophecy and spirituality, the equal of Moshe. The Chazal have the temerity to say, b'Yisrael lo kom, aval b'Moshe lo kom. The Jews never had another Moshe, but the rest of the world had a Moshe. And Manu, who was he? Bilam. Bilam, he claims that he machazeh shadai yechazeh. He knows what God wants. He's intellectually sound. Nu magever shesum ayin. Shumayim, his eyes are closed, meaning he's fair, he's just. He has no prejudices. You know, on the famous statue of justice in the Supreme Court in the United States, at least the statue is just. So justice is blindfolded. The Torah, it says, Lo sakir ponim. So Bilam says, Shesumai, and I can't see, I'm completely unbiased, objective. Yodeya Imreil. I know what God wants. That's the people you have to watch out for. The people who know what God wants. In the name of God, the worst of atrocities are perpetrated because we know what God wants. We're sure of it. No fail glue enoyim. He is the perfect person. And he advertises it. He doesn't, he's not ashamed of it. He gives you his card. It says Bilam ben Beor. So it says Nabi, Nofel, Gluhi Noyim, Shum Ayin. He got PhDs. So he's intellectually the enemy. He doesn't hate the Jewish people. He just says that it's somehow they have to be fixed up. And he sees good things in the Jewish people. To balance it, he says, "Ma tovu alecha Yaakov." We begin every day with Bilam. I always thought that was remarkable. And there are Jews who won't quote another rabbi, but we quote Bilam every day. And he is the one that really is the most dangerous of all, because he comes with an intellect and he gives advice. And he always knows the weakness of societies. He's the one that tells the men of Midian that Elohim shells umazu sone zima. The way to get them is through immorality. Don't debate with them. Don't have a discussion with them. Give them a good time. That will destroy them. And you will notice that in Tanakh, and even in Chumash, that we say, whenever we're talking about straying from the path, the verb that's used is always the verb of znus. Asher atem zonim achareya. So that's the weak point. You see, it's the weak point today in society. All of this mishugasim that go on, pride and parades, and it's all znus. And that's what society accepts. And that is what eventually destroys society. So Bilam is intellectual. Bilam is out to destroy the Jewish people on a different level and with different weapons than Balak. And that's why Balak and Bilam are never on the same page. The Balak builds for him altars, he goes to this place, to that. Nothing works because they have conflicting ideas. They're only united in their hatred. But eventually Bilam gives them this idea of znus. And we read at the end of the parsha how the Jewish people succumb to it. And they succumb to it in such a way that even the leaders of the Jewish people, even Zimri, he's a member of the Sanhedrin, he's a Nasi, a Shevet. So scandals always abound, simply because of the fact that the human beings are human beings. But it's the inability to recognize that and to deal with it properly that leads to all sorts of problems. So we therefore have in this week's Parsha a template for the future of the Jewish people throughout the ages. There will always be a Balak and there will always be Bilam. Sometimes they go together. Most of the time, it's two different approaches and two different societies, two different struggles. But the struggle is always l'chorali esolam hazeh. Somehow we have to put them in their place. They think that somehow they're special. There was a Jewish professor at Harvard by the name of Wolfson. He's got nothing to do with Wolfson too. And he was the first. What happened was that there was a very wealthy Jew that wanted to sponsor a chair, which meant the sponsor a department of study in Harvard. And Harvard refused to take the money from the Jew. We're talking the 1890s. Today they're smarter, they take the money and they knew they're anti-Semites anyway. And so finally, one of the Jews became a member of the cabinet. He had a high political influence. So they took the money and they established a chair for Jewish studies. Chas v'shalom, not to interfere with Harvard, but okay, if Jews want to go and study Jewish studies. By the way, in Jewish studies today in the United States, over 80% of the participating students are non-Jews. And they appointed as the professor, I think it was Henry Wolfson. And he was the first Jewish professor at Harvard. And he was very rudely treated by the other professors. And finally, one day, one of the professors said to him openly, he said, "What makes you think that you're so special?" And he answered him, he said, "We are the only people that I know of that when a book falls on the floor, you pick it up and kiss it." But that's Bilam. Why are you so special? And you see that in the nevuah of Bilam, he has nevuah for everybody, not just for the Jewish people. He's talking to Amalek, he's talking to him, everybody. Because he doesn't think the Jewish people are special. And he doesn't want them to be special. So those are the prototypes that the Torah presents before us in this week's parsha. And we see that they are living creatures in front of our eyes. They describe not what was, but what is. And therefore, these are lessons that are important for us to learn and to take to heart. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashi Omer Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'zakus es Yisrael U'ficha chirba lahem Torah mitzvos shenemar Anoi chafetz l'man tzidko Yagdil Torah v'yadir.